Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the Foreclosure Show. Scott Carson here, always excited to be here today. Today is a special day that I want to share with you a story on somebody that I spoke to just a few days ago. Because I think you may know some folks that are in trouble right now. You may be in this position. And if you are, I want to kind of give you guys an option, not only to use me, or a solution to getting out of a bad situation. We've all been there. The market's changed. You buy a property. You think the value is one thing, and over the next few months, the property drops in values or the market has changed. Sounds familiar? Yes. The last 6 months obviously have been crazy, not only across Texas, but across the entire United States. And that kind of an interesting, I think it's karma. Honestly, I think it's completely karma. So if you've ever been to one of my workshops, you know that we like to spend time going through how to find IRA investors, right? How we jump on the county records, we'll search for the major IRA custodian names, and we'll look up the addresses, we'll look up mail addresses for these investors and stuff like that. Well, we did that. We did that recently in Tarrant County, Collin County, Dallas County for our most recent event 3 weeks ago. We looked at this one property, we actually pulled it up, and I discussed it was in Plano, and I said, I recognize the name. I've heard the name a couple times before. It was an investor that had gotten money from two investors, actually three investors, husband and wife, and then another investor. All three of them partnered up to fund this deal in Plano. Now, I'm not going to give you the address. I'm not going to give you the investor names because I don't want to do that. But it was kind of funny. You know, we did that 2 weeks ago. By and by last week, before we left town, I get a phone call from a guy. He actually emails me first. And he says, hey, Scott, I came across your information online. I think it was through ChatGPT, he said. And I searched. And I've got a note for sale that we're getting ready to foreclose on. I would like to just talk with you about it before we foreclose on it. I was like, okay, yeah, let's take a look at it. So he calls me up. He tells me the situation, that it's a non-performing note. The house on Zillow showed it as a value of like $396. Although after he sent me the documents, I can see that these three investors had financed a purchase to a fix and flipper in Dallas. $280,000 purchase for the price, and about $170,000 for the rehab. The investor walked with $50K at the close of the deal, so he had money to rehab the property. Well, based on we'll just call him Houston, the guy's out of Houston, the investor, one of the investors, he's like, well, yeah, we haven't gotten payments in a year, and we know that the property needs to be complete. It has been gutted. There's no fixtures. It's unlivable. There's nothing in the kitchen, nothing in the bathrooms. Unfortunately, believe that the market just changed, and the guy has gone silent, not only with me, but with about 4 or 5 other deals. And I said, ooh, okay. I said, what do you owe on the property? Or what do you owe on your note? And he goes, $396,000. I'm like, okay. Well, we know the property's not that right now. Just Zillow says it's $396, but it doesn't know the interior condition. We know Zillow's wrong on this right one. Now, it's not a bad looking exterior of the property, but it's probably going to be about 50 on the cheap side, if not 100, to fix it up to get it where it needs to be in that price point. Well, they owe over $400,000. They're not going to get it. I'm not going to buy the note from the guy. And I said, well, are you going through the foreclosure process? And he goes, yeah, we started it. It was supposed to go in January. We delayed it to February. And now I was like, well, if you want to, I'm glad to reach out to your borrower, the fix and flipper, and see if we can negotiate a deed in lieu. Maybe save you a couple grand from foreclosure costs where he'll deed the property back to you. It avoids a foreclosure. And he can keep on going. Well, the guy is still active on YouTube and other social media talking about deals. And I actually recognize the guy. I think I've spoken on stage with him before. And so I said, well, let me reach out to him. So I reach out to the guy. And he's not answering a lot of the normal channels, but I do reach out to him. And I say, listen, would love to have you on my podcast. It's the power of a podcast sometimes. Somebody's ego gets into it. And he responded to that. Oh, yeah, I'd love to talk to him. So we booked a phone call this last Thursday or Friday at 2 o'clock. I get on the phone. He recognizes it. He knows me. Like, hey, man, thanks for having me on. I'm like, hey, man, glad to have you on the podcast. Talk about fix and flipping, what's going on in the market these days. How's it going? Well, the guy tells me, like, hey, man, it's been tough. I've had some deals blow up on me in the last 6 months that I thought would be great. Unfortunately, the values have dropped, foreclosures have dropped, and I'm just stuck between a rock and a hard place. I said, man, I'm sorry to hear that. That happens. That happened to me a few years back with deals going south and dragging on. It's a tough place to be. I believe karma has put us on the path here. He goes, what do you mean? So I originally met the guy like 9 years ago in San Diego, literally at a different marketing conference. We've spoken on a couple stages before, so I have rapport with him, and we're talking about this. And I am serious. I would like to have the guy on my podcast talk about fix and flipping and costs and stuff like that. And I talked to him. I said, well, I had somebody reach out to me, one of your investors reach out to me to talk about buying the note. And he's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested in buying the note. And I said, which property was it? I told him, and he goes, okay, yeah, it needs a lot of work. It's not where it is. And like you said before, the values just dropped, and I got caught between a rock and a hard place on like 6 deals. I'm like, man, like I said, I've been there. I understand. I'm not feeling bad. I'm not saying you're a bad person. Bad things happen to good people all the time. And if it's investing, you're eventually going to have something. And the guy's done a great job beforehand for years. Okay? I said, well, let's talk about doing a deed in lieu cash or keys. Because I talked to the investor, Houston, all right? I don't know what I say, Harry, Houston, we're going to call him. Anyway, we'll just call him Houston. And he's willing to talk about doing a deed in lieu, cash or keys, or just a friendly foreclosure where you deed the property over to him and you walk away. You're not responsible for any outstanding balance. It's just basically gone on. He's like, oh, really? Would the other investors that he's partnered with be willing to do that? Because I guess he's had some bad deals with those guys too. And I said, well, I've been told they are. They're willing to do something with you. And he's like, oh, well, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to speed this up. I'm willing to help avoid any extra costs on the foreclosure, deed it over to him, and go from there. So there's about $6,000 in back taxes owed too from this past year on the deal. And so I said, okay, great. Let me talk to him. I'm glad to be the go-in-between for you, if you like. And he's like, that would be great, man. That would be great. I'd love to, because I know that some people have hard feelings because of what's happened. I just want to get this done. And they already foreclosed on him on a couple other deals. So it's not, I mean, if he's already had a couple foreclosures on him, it's, he could just go and do the same thing for the next 30 to 60 days. The investor, Harry, he's got his money tied up in this. He can't get the access to the property back center, so he can turn around and market it, put it with a hard money lender is what we did. So that's one thing I called Harry up. I said, hey, buddy, I said, investors willing to do a deed in lieu for you, sign the property over to you. I said, why don't we run this deal by a hard money lender? I'll run it by Mike Hoffman, who was originally one of our, on the podcast recently out of Longhorn Investments in Dallas. I said him or his team could take a look at it, maybe come up with pre-approved financing. I'll send the property by one of my local realtors, and they can pull accurate comps for you and get a bit of an idea of days on market, stuff like that. Because if you don't sell it at auction, which you probably won't, you'll want to list it for the full legal balance to wipe out any junior liens or stuff like that. And this way, you've got an REO, okay? If even the guy doesn't sign the deed in lieu, the guy goes silent on me again, doesn't sign the deed in lieu, that Harry's working with an attorney to get signed up, you just finish foreclosure and wipe it all out. Can't really go after the investor because it's unencumbered. You have one action thing here in Texas where you can only foreclose and either go after the property. If you get the property back, you can't go up for the deficiency. I mean, you could always file one, but it's not going to be collectible. So anyway, Harry's wanting to do this. He's talking to the other investors, getting back to me. We're negotiating. I'm glad to do a deed loan. Pretty simple to do a quick claim deed, deed the property over. Harry and his investor will need to do a release of lien. Now they'll own an REO asset that they can try to market it and sell it to a hard money lender, or let a hard money lender refinance them out with an end buyer. They're going to lose some money on this, okay? Harry and his partners, IRA investors, are going to lose some money on this. It's a shit sandwich, okay? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling. Who overpaid for assets. The market went down on them, or they paid accurate pricing, maybe they didn't overpay for it. They paid good pricing for assets, but then we know the market's changed, and that's happened. It happened to me years ago with a couple fix and flips here in Austin, Texas. And so I empathize for the guy, the fix and flipper, because it's not a good place to be in. And I also empathize with Harry and his investment partners who funded the deal. And the only way to make a little bit of lemonade is to try to get this sold, get as much as they can as the REO. Don't think the property's going to even comp back to close what they're owed, even if they put money into it to get it fully rehabbed. They don't have extra money to put into the rehab, so they're going to be happy probably getting 50 cents on the dollar of what they lent out. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but at least they can move on versus be tied up and dragged out. So the whole idea of this is if you've got an investor who's in trouble, who's facing struggles with the market changing, rehab costs going, projects dragging on longer, work with them. Offer them a deed in lieu. Offer them to sign the property over to you, and they walk away, and now you take the property back and you market it. Because if it's not working, it's not going to do anybody any good for a vacant property to sit there unrehabbed, dragging out, late fees, money costs skyrocketing if you don't have a clear exit strategy. And sometimes, if you're the fix and flipper, it does make sense to deed the property back to the lender. Say, listen, I can't do anything with this. I'd rather get this back to you and be done with it. and let you try to get your money back as best see, because it's not working on my end. And if you think, and I've had that happen before with investors like, well, I want the full price. I'm like, you can't get the full price. The market's dropped. I had a deal like this happen in Austin. Bought the house for $180. It was worth about $350 when we bought it. But over a 6-month period of time, there's about a dozen foreclosures that took place in that neighborhood. And so the value dropped from over $300 down to $150,000, and that was it. And I'm sitting in a rehab property, and not complete rehab property, because I'm living in it, just trying to save face, paying a little bit each monthly. Investor got ugly about it. Well, we want our full $300. I'm like, well, the property's not worth $300 now. I don't have the extra $150 to give you. Plus, our deal is only exclusive to this property. It's non-recourse loan. You can't come after me for the difference. Argue, and eventually I said, listen, I'm just going to deed the property back to you and let you deal with it and go from there. And that's what I did. I filled out the deed. I sent them a copy of it. I went and recorded my own copy at the county, deeding the property back to them. They didn't file a lien against the property, so it wasn't showing a lien on it, just a deed transfer. So I just deeded the property back to them and went from there. It was a win-win. They actually ended up moving into it, limited for a couple of years. Market came back. They sold it off and went from there. So it's a shit sandwich sometimes, but I want to give you a solution that maybe people don't think about. We get emotionally tied into deals and money and stuff like that. Sometimes just offering cash for keys or a friendly foreclosure in a bad situation is the best thing you can do. And that's what I brought up to Harry and his investors. That's what I brought up to Fix and Flipper. Just trying to help people, get out of a bad situation before the holidays. So if you're in a situation like that, or you're struggling on a fix and flip deal, or you've got investors not paying you or stuff like that, please reach out to me. I'm glad to help out. Glad to be that third party in between. And maybe my name and my actions or the podcast or ChatGPT can help you come up with a solution and turn a shit sandwich into something maybe a little bit tastier than crap. All right? So go out, take some action, everybody. Hope you have a great week, and we will see you at the top. Oh, big reminder, we have something coming up the very first of the year, first weekend, January 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. We're doing a Best of 2025 podcast recap. We'll have the best episodes and interviews being restreaming all day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's January 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. You can catch it by going to our YouTube channel, WeCloseNotes.tv. We'll be live streaming that across all our social media all day long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday after January 1st. So thank you for making the No Close Show the #1 podcast and our #1 YouTube channel for all the investors out there. Go out, take some action, and we'll see you at the top, everybody.